Welcome back to another episode of Shared Light with JR and Dusty. I am obviously JR.
I'm Dusty.
So, just kind of providing a quick recap. We covered our journey from kids to about 2020. All the joys that came with having kids, all the positives that come with enjoying being a family, and then hitting an eventual point where we lose focus on each other. And then leading that to me having to confront some personal demons and my ego and some insecurities and beginning the work on me. Basically really just hyper focusing on what I actually valued, who I really wanted to be as a person, who I thought I could be as a person, really living up to the expectation that I have, that I think you see in me as a person, which unfortunately that came from a very tumultuous time in our relationship, which caused you a lot of hurt, that you, again, your defense mechanism is to put it on the shelf.
Yeah, I think mostly at the time I put it on the shelf because I just wanted to focus on us and moving forward. Not necessarily because we weren't, given that situation, like, it won't happen again, but like if it did in where we're at in our marriage today versus 6 years ago, it would be absolutely something that we would talk through and communicate and break it down to the nitty gritty, and you know what I mean? But we were not in that place in our marriage. So for me, I had to shelve it so that I could work on moving forward. But I also, in that, not that it caused you, like, you have your own reasons for why you did what you did, but I was also hyper focused on the kids. I was not focused at all on us and our marriage, and it was 100% the kids.
I mean, that needed to be your focus. Which, again, the other side of that, and that's, again, what we talked about a few episodes ago, where the handoff, right, where it's difficult because at the same time, my work needed to be my focus to make sure that we were moving in the direction that I thought we needed to move. It cannot be so hyper-focused that we lose touch on the now and the us of the equation there.
Yeah. And we needed to learn that communication so that, we could hand off. We just were not in a space where it was like, I am overwhelmed with the kids today or whatever. And that being something that you could just step in and do.
Yeah. Yeah, because at the time, we were essentially fighting our own battles and just...
We were doing our own thing.
Yeah, dealing with it. We weren't necessarily a team in that aspect.
Yeah.
But so I, consequentially, I hyper-focused on making myself a better person and doing a lot of, I guess, self-help work. I started reading a lot, focusing in a lot, not necessarily on trauma or anything of that instance, but really just a lot of the focus that I had was on, being a better person. I was also starting to transition into a phase of my career where I was taking on more of a leadership role. So I was really trying to focus in on what can I do to make myself better at that, to really become a more effective leader within my career, which did a lot of good in identifying a lot of the behaviors and attitudes and mentalities that I had not dealt with previously. And it also really started to build a central focus for me on what is truly important for me in terms of not just work, but in what I am doing for work and how that work translates to how much time we are able to spend together, how much time I'm able to invest in my kids. Yeah. Because for context, during that time of them being little till about 2020. Like, I don't remember a lot of that, them being babies, because I was so focused on work, and I was working, 80, 90 hours a week just to make sure that we were getting what we needed. And it provided a new perspective on just what my goals are for life. Some of it, I've shared with you. You've been exposed to some of the stuff that I've learned and worked through. But again, it came to a place where I knew that where I was working was not going to be sustainable for what we were wanting out of life. Yeah. And so I started looking, casually looking for another job along the same lines of what I was doing. And luckily enough, I've got a friend of mine who I see as a mentor just in my career, and has been an inspiration to me. Opened up essentially an opportunity for me to transfer and go work at a different company. That is very much, and that's where I still am today. And it's very much more in line with what we with what we envision for life.
And I think what we needed, given the circumstance of where we were at in our marriage, I wouldn't call it a bad time in our marriage. It was a bump for sure. But it kind of, it's kind of like when you're driving and you hit a big bump and then you're like you have to refocus on, that's what we needed at that point in our marriage. Like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You guys are, one's going this way, one's going this way, and you're not doing this together. So that was more in line of where we wanted to be.
And it was, and I'll be honest, the initial focus for me where I was money, right? So it was, how much money can I make? And I did take a pay cut to go where I went. But you cannot put a price on the family time that I gained and the ability to do really what I think have always dreamed of as a family. Where we have time to spend together and do things together and really just enjoy each other's company.
Yeah. Well, you can't really put a price on the growth of our marriage.
Right.
With that transition.
Right. Because it was also during this period of time that we started really being able to communicate a little better. And definitely more back centralized into each other and really leaning on each other. It's not just as husband and wife, but as friends.
Yeah, like kind of back to our roots of, we didn't ever really communicate the way we do now, but back to like when it was just us and we were each other's focus. Yes, we had kids, but there's also and needs to be that space for each other as well. Yeah. And I think for you that really started once you made that transition in your job and we kind of figured out what we needed to do to get back on the path we wanted to be on. I think that's when you kind of started to, in doing the work for yourself, opening up more with your emotions and or trying to. Because I still don't feel like it's easy for you, but it is easier.
I will say it's not ever probably going to be anywhere that I am comfortable.
Yeah, it's not second nature
to but yeah, 100%. I think it's a lot with you. I am fine sharing how I feel and the things that bother me and the things that don't bother me and.
Right.
Obviously, the things that scare me, and that's the way it needs to be in a marriage, ultimately. Yeah. As a husband, I should be able to lean on my wife and tell her my feelings, and vice versa. You should be able to not fear telling me how you feel about things. I think it allowed us the breathing room and the space and the time to get back to that central focus of us and working towards what we envision for the next 20 years. And we're doing awesome and really
Yeah.
I think starting to enjoy, and we still enjoy, not to say we don't, but really enjoying each other's company and time and doing things as a family. And that leads us to, last year.
Last year.
It was right around last year, maybe a little bit.
It's been like a year and a half, I think.
So, yeah. Where, we've been talking about this whole time that your defense mechanism is always to put things on the shelf. And you talked a little bit about it in your story, that the one thing that you have learned now and some of the work you've done on you is the way anxiety works is it holds on to a lot of those feelings and situations, and it starts trying to connect dots, but it does not try to deal with that until you feel secure and safe, which a year and a half ago, I think you got to that point.
Yeah, I think, and we've talked about it before, at that point, we started, we got our home gym. We started working out together, and it was like, I don't know. I think just a combination of the communication and the new balance in work-home life and the conversations we're having, plus working out every day together and, adding another element of something that we shared together, just, I guess, took me to another level of security in our marriage at that point. And so my system was, I was secure. I was, because when we did go through that bump in our marriage in 2020, it kind of threw me for a loop, I guess I would say, because up until that point, for 14 years or whatever, that was never a thought in my brain. Like, it was never, even though that had been my experience in past relationships, like with you, it was different, and it had been different for 14 years. So it was never something that ever crossed my mind. And so when something like that happened, it just shifted me right back to, that fear and that anxiety of, it is a possibility. Maybe, I'm not secure. And in that, what am I doing that's not enough? Maybe I haven't been enough. Maybe I'm not doing and being what I should be,
You very much internalized it and blamed yourself for my choices.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think I just looked at it like that wouldn't have happened had I been that person for you, And again, it just kind of put me back and brought me back to, like, it took me out of that security that I had had for 14 years, 15 years. So then, fast forward to a year and a half ago, when I am feeling that again, I'm feeling that security and that, like, it's not something I think about. Like, it's not something that, because when stuff like that happens for me, my brain just hyper focuses on it. It's just something that it's there the minute you wake up, and it's something that you just have to fight away for the day so that you can go about your day. So a year and a half ago, I was back to that security, like I was good. And yeah.
That's when the darkness creeped in.
That's when the darkness decided I was good enough to deal with the stuff that I have shelved for so long.
Which has led us to some dark moments for you. And again, it's a lot of that insecurity and you internalizing a lot of it as, what am I doing? And we've talked about it numerous times now and finally have gotten to a place where we can communicate effectively about it.
Yeah.
But it led to a lot of struggles for us to figure out that communication aspect of me having a somewhat of an understanding of where you're coming from and you having an understanding of where I'm coming from, and getting to a realization that we're not always going to understand where each of us is coming from, but that's okay. And how are we tackling the problem and not
each other?
Right. And it has led you to do some work different aspects of work on just what you have encountered and what you have. Yours is not same as what I was doing. Yours is very much focused on trying to understand anxiety and shadow work.
Yeah, I think for me, because it did come on so quickly, for me it was more, I didn't understand it. Like, where did it come from? Why am I having all these thoughts? And I didn't, I try really hard, even now, to not live in it and dwell on it. And, like I said before, like, have a victim mentality about it.
Because you did have a lot of guilt for even feeling that way.
Yeah, of course, because I know, it's kind of like I try to explain it to you. I have my anxiety brain and I have my reality brain, and they just clash. They're so opposite, There's so many things that come to my mind that I'm just like, but why would you even think that? That's never been the case. It's not, and for me, it really centered on us and you leaving and you finding somebody better because I wasn't enough, or I haven't been enough.
And I think it's fair to also explain to the listeners that this also coincides with, you have been dealing with some health issues. You ended up getting injured while we were working out, which took you away from that consistently. Right. Again, you got sick. I mean, there's been a lot of little setbacks for you
that just mess with your mental
that just compound some of that anxiety, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because you start to get a little bit of breathing room and then something else.
Yeah. Just knocks it right back down.
And I think that's the scary thing about, anybody dealing with anxiety. I have experienced, like we talked about, moments of anxiety where I have some things that really get me, that in particular with my mom passed not too long ago, and I just, dealing with those emotions caused me a panic attack or two. But I think that's the thing that gets lost on people dealing with anxiety, is that any little thing can add fuel to that fire and trigger it. And it may be something as small as, I didn't have time to wash the dishes today.
Yeah, because it just adds to that. You're not enough. You're not being enough. You're not doing enough. And you, in anxiety, you really notice and pick up every little thing. If you were struggling with something at work.
Yeah, so you pick up on any emotional changes that I have.
And that translates in my brain as, he's upset with me. He's maybe he's thinking about leaving. Maybe he's, whatever. That it just fuels my fears in that anxiety.
And the kids. Shifting their emotions will also.
Yeah, so our youngest also struggles with anxiety, unfortunately, and in trying to help her deal with hers, it's almost like we fuel each other's at times. Hers really sets me off, just not because she has it and she struggles, but because I can't fix it, because I'm also struggling, And so that puts another layer of expectation on me that I already put so much expectation on myself to be and do, and that, and also not just being and doing, but not letting what I struggle with affect you or affect the kids.
Which I think is where you and I have a disagreement, because I don't see it as it affecting me. I see it as like, this is just what we need to deal with now.
Yeah.
Kind of like 20 years ago, where it's like, he's had all these problems, but it's just what we're dealing with now. Yeah. We're going to deal with it together, right? But you do have that tendency to put that higher level of expectation. And I do the same thing to myself, obviously, but where we set these expectations that are so high for ourselves that anything that...
Yeah, like not getting dishes done that day.
Yeah, anything that doesn't feel like we're living up to the expectations puts a level of guilt or... disappointment, or a feeling that you failed, or whatever it may be for that day, that unfortunately for you ends up compounding what you're already feeling.
Yeah, and a year and a half ago, I just was not in a space like I am today to be able to say, that's okay. That's not an expectation. You don't have that expectation of me. My kids don't have that expectation of me. In the moment, a year and a half ago, that was detrimental to my mental health. You know, any little thing was detrimental to my mental health. Your mood, you know, if you were off that day, not being able to work out, my kids having a bad day, my kids being sick and not knowing what's wrong with them, or, but in that, I really tried to just start focusing on the why. Like, where is it coming from, and why am I struggling so hard right now? Kind of, honestly, out of the blue. Like, I don't feel like it was 6 months that I just started to slowly become more and more and more. For me, it felt like a matter of weeks, a couple weeks, And then once it started, like you said, things just kept happening that compounded, how I felt, or set me back. Any little progress that I would make, it would just put me right back into that darkness. So I felt, even though I was trying to get out of it, I felt like I was constantly living in it. And I struggled with that back and forth, back and forth.
And still doing some days.
Yeah. Some days it's hard to get back to where I am on a normal day. But, that summer is when I had hormonal element to come into all of that comes into play.
I mean, that's the other thing that adds to this, right? Is that we did have to live through the unfortunate side of a miscarriage, which takes a toll. That further adds to the complexity of everything that's going on, because at that point, I'm not, I don't know how to deal with it, so I'm not talking about it.
Yeah, you're internalizing.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I completely shut down, and I know that I didn't talk about it or voice how I felt about it or anything. So, and you're already dealing with anxiety, and now this is like our communication, not that it was bad, but my natural tendency is to close in.
Yeah.
And you're, in this instance, finally at a point where you can't put anything else on the shelf.
No, it's full.
Yeah.
You have to deal with it.
Yeah. So, and it's been hard, and there has been instances where, it has gotten extremely dark for you.
Yeah.
And through all of this, I'm doing my best to understand it, but I just don't. I don't understand anxiety. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I think I have a better understanding of it now.
Yeah.
Than I did a year and a half ago, for sure.
Yeah.
Because at the time, it wasn't even, I didn't see it as she feels like I'm leaving or whatever. It's, what did I do right now to be a little mistrusted?
Right.
When, I thought we got past all of
All of that years ago.
In my mind, I'm thinking, if you wanted to deal with this, you should, you should have walked out then. Why are you doing it to me now? You know what I mean? And
right.
It's not even, I internalize it oh, crap, she's ready to leave.
Yeah.
And that's where your anxiety starts fueling my insecurities.
Yes. And we just feed off of each other, that way.
Because for me, it's never in my mind that I'm going anywhere. But in my mind, this is all happening because she can't handle being with me anymore.
Right.
And the opposite is true for you. For you, it's, he's not going to deal with my anxiety, so he's going to leave at any moment.
Right.
And it took us a good 6 months to 8 months to finally figure that out about each other.
And that was a pretty much everyday thing in that 6 to 8 months. Yeah. I feel like every day that was something that I really struggled with. And it's hard because it's almost like you fight yourself every day. You wake up with the thoughts, the irrational thoughts. And, anxiety always focuses on worst case scenario for me. It goes right to worst case scenario in any situation, whether it be you, whether it be us, whether it be kids, whether it be whatever. It's always going to focus on that worst case scenario. So every morning I had to wake up and focus on my worst case scenario. And in those moments, at that point in time, that worst case scenario was you were cheating and you were leaving. Those are the two things that my brain really just honed in on, zoomed in on, believed. And that's another thing with, those thoughts that come is it feels like reality. And any little thing that's going to make that feel or look true is just one more thing that adds to that anxiety,
Yeah, I think they call that like confirmation bias. Like any little
Yes.
thing that will make it true, you latch onto.
Yes, because, in anxiety, you're always scanning for those. You're scanning for any little thing that's going to make that anxiety true or those thoughts true or that worst case scenario. It's really happening now because of this one thing.
Today's the day that it's...
Yes. So those were some really hard days, and those were a lot of those days that I couldn't function. Literally was in bed all day, living in my anxiety, And it got to a point where, we had to just address it because every day there was something that would make it true in my anxiety brain. And it got to where I was being accusatory, like I had just convinced myself, like, this is what's happening. This is what he's doing. And why won't he just tell me, just tell me that you want to go. Like, that's going to be easier than me having to figure it out. Or, the hurt of like the bomb dropping one day unexpectedly. Or so there was a lot of days where it was just like begging you, just tell me what's going on.
And in my brain, it's, well, she wants out, but she doesn't want to be the one
Right.
that she wants out. So that says that she wants out.
Yeah.
So, and that's the conversation. Like, if you want out, just say you want out.
Yeah. Which in my brain is like, so it is a thought in his mind. He is thinking about this, and it's the same for me. You thought, well, maybe he just doesn't want to be the reason, or maybe he doesn't want,
Right.
To tell me what's going on. And so he wants me to be the one to end it.
And that eventually led us to the place that we are today.
Yeah.
Where we got to a point where this is not working for either one of us at this point, because I'm not able to figure out what you need from me. You're not able to figure out what I need.
Yeah.
And we're just getting deeper into this cycle where eventually it's going to lead to...
We're both just done.
Yeah. And I mean, in my mind, it was, we're going to get to a point where you're going to do something to hurt yourself.
Yeah. Because I did have those moments where it would be easier. In my mind, it would have been easier.
And
to just not be here.
That was always my biggest fear. So in my mind, it's no, we need to figure this out. Like, we need to figure out a way to be able to talk so that we can actually start figuring out a way to move forward, so that it's not like this constant Groundhog Day of the same thing every single day.
Yes.
Because it was very much like we would start the week out, and then as the week progressed, it would get a little better, and then by the weekend, like, we're fine because I'm home.
Yeah, and that's another element to anxiety, is being in the place that I was at. It was very hard for me to have you even go to work and be away. And like, because you do have those thoughts, and then you're like, well, what is he doing all day? Like, realistically, you're working, and I know that, but there are other elements that come into play while you're at work that is like, oh, yep, this could be happening. Absolutely. And so I didn't, it was really hard for me to have you go to work every day. And it would just start that spiral all over again.
And so, I mean, it just got to a point where it was like, no, I mean, we need to find a solution to be able to talk about this.
Yeah.
And we did. One afternoon, as scary as it was for the both of us, we sat down and like, okay, here is like we have the only way this is going to work is for us to have some actual ground rules and how we're talking. Like, know that I'm not going anywhere, and we've talked about this before. Like, you know, you're not going anywhere. Like, so that's a non-negotiable. Like, we cannot talk about that when we're talking about this.
That's just off the table.
And then it was just about finding like, okay, well, what hurts me, and why do I get defensive? Like working through some of it backwards of like, okay, you're allowed to ask about this because I know that that's what's bothering you, but you cannot ask me in this manner or
be accusatory.
Right. Or the flip side to that is I also need to approach it from a curious standpoint as opposed to
trying to fix it.
Right. So I need to try and understand.
Right.
And quit trying to solve the problem because it's not my problem to solve necessarily.
Right.
And it has taken us, you know, a year and a half to get where we're at today. And again, you're not completely past the hurdle and completely, you know, we're not completely on the other side of that, but we are at a point where, like, we know we're on the same team.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not every day anymore that I wake up and feel that way or have the thoughts. And I still have them sometimes, but the difference is now I can just communicate them with you. That this is how I'm feeling, and he doesn't need to try to understand it or why or what he's doing different or what is he not doing, or he can just be that safety for me.
Right. And I think that was the biggest thing that we both identified is that she is my safe place. Mm-hmm. So I need to be able to talk to her in a manner that I can express how I'm feeling without her internalizing that like she's doing that to make me feel that way.
Right.
And the same for you. Like, I have to be able to accept that I am your safety and that you need to be able to express how you're feeling to me, because that's what gets you through that episode usually, is being able to have that. So because the conversations before that were always the same pattern. We get mad at each other, we argue, and then at the very end, we're both at a point where we're done enough with the conversation that we're just trying to comfort each other through it. And that was the part that was the most beneficial for both of us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and we will touch on the communication and how you focus on that light in the dark in a later episode.
Yeah. There's a lot more to touch.
Right.
This is just kind of the overview of how that darkness came for me and kind of what it looks like. And
our journey, our journey from your past and my past to our journey together to today. As we mentioned in the first episode, our goal for this is to not just share our insight, but to hope that people get, something that eventually helps them either communicate better or just be a better version of themselves, because ultimately, we have had a long journey and we're not experts and we're not psychotherapists or anything like that, but we have been in the trenches together and have experienced a lot that maybe just through our shared experience, people will be able to find some light in.
Yeah, I think we've just found, we've always known each other's light, but I think we've just found our communication. We found our needs and our needs from each other. And we've just found, that balance. Even though I still struggle sometimes, you still struggle sometimes, we still have a very good balance.
And we're able to communicate in the light.
Yes.
And not in the dark.
In the dark. And that's a huge one.
So with that, please continue to share your light with others. And we wish you a blessed week.